Hi, so today I'm going to look at language learning and linguistics. Now it's been a little while since I've made videos like this because I've been concentrating on eyesight and vision, so time for a little change. So I'm going to be looking at input, in particular unconscious input that we get when we acquire a language. Can we use that method of, very natural input, like total immersion, what have you, to actually learn a language of our choosing. So I've got 3 videos with 3 things to consider. Now I'm just going to name them. You can look them up yourselves if you're interested, and I would suggest that you do give them a look and see what you think. So The Myth of Input, How Not to Learn a Language by Kangaroo English. So obviously he does not agree with it. Then we've got We Do Learn Languages Through Input. That's through days and words, and he actually disagrees with Kangaroo. So I think they have both for and against arguments, which I'll come on to. And then there's, does input have to be comprehensible? So if you decide to go to a new country and you're going to have total immersion, so you're not going to speak your own language, does all of the new language that you're going to hear, do you have to understand everything for that learning to filter down? And that's another interesting thing. So to start with, do we acquire languages naturally? Well, yes, that's how we acquire our mother tongue and languages when we're growing up, if we're bilingual or multilingual, and also up into our 20s, and we can even just acquire a language when we're older, but usually the conditions aren't right for that. But anyway, so our first language, obviously we have total immersion. We sort of arrive, we don't speak any other language, we're surrounded by people talking to us, so a large part of that time we have more input coming into us that is just around, if you like, then certainly than we are putting out to start with, because like in the beginning we just go wah, isn't it? So having said that, we certainly do have some direct input. So we are taught our first language as well, because even if you don't go to school, you still have parents and adults and siblings and what have you, helping you to make sounds, helping you to understand. So they're going, Mama, Baba, look, horse. And, the famous, I run all the way down the hill. You ran all the way down the hill, how clever. So we have input, we have correction, we have kind of peer validation. Validation's the wrong word, but let's say peer learning from our peers. So we're sort of learning all the rules of the language, obviously unconsciously by being around repeating patterns, but we also have some deliberate input which helps us learn the language. So if we don't go to school, I mean, obviously we can still speak our language, but usually we go to school, so we learn grammar, we learn correct forms, we learn vocabulary because we learn to use more words. Obviously we learn formal, informal speech. We learn reading and writing, spelling, punctuation. So with our first language, we do have some, dedicated input. But if you leave all that aside, so let's say I want to go to Portugal and I'm not going to bother with lessons. I'm just going to acquire the language naturally. I honestly don't think you're going to get very far like that. And the reason is not because, now this is not because you won't just pick it up, but you've decided, okay, I'm going to learn Portuguese. So that's not natural acquisition in itself, because at the point you've decided to learn a language, you've made a decision to learn a language. So once you've made that decision, you are actively learning. You're not just, it doesn't just kind of filter through to you. Now, you may do it in ways that may filter through to you. You may decide, right, I'm not going to bother with grammar and all that, I just go with the flow. Now, it is certainly possible to learn a language without doing any formal lessons, but say you go to Portugal, so you've already decided you're going to learn a language, but you're not going to speak a single word of English, and you're just going to go with the flow and learn from people. So maybe you get a job in a shop at the counter, and although that sounds like her, you get a job in a shop without speaking the language. I can assure you, people do this all the time. I worked with someone who worked in a shop with me, had hardly a lick of English. All they had to do was smile at the customers, say thank you, what have you, and as long as the money was right, everyone was happy. And of course they learned more English along the way. That was fine. I've worked in customer service in Norway without that great Norwegian. It is actually very, very simple to do a customer service job. So yes, things soak in. You will certainly learn everyday phrases that people use. You will learn more of the here and now stuff. So being able to obey simple commands, being able to discuss on a topic, having a broad vocabulary, maybe complicated grammatical structures, maybe not. I'm not saying you couldn't have advanced grammatical structures, because even with simple speech, we use advanced grammatical structures. Read any children's book, and I'm thinking for children who can begin to read a story with narrative, so maybe 6, 7, 8 age group, and you will see quite advanced, you'll see adult forms and structures there. So you can certainly learn that, but what is likely to happen is that what you learn will be in a little bit of a bubble. So it might just be relative to the people that you're with, the type of work that you're doing, the type of situations that you're in, and you will have gaps for sure in your language, and you know that is okay. But to be honest, if you want to learn a language fluently, and you decided I want to go and live in Portugal, therefore I need to speak Portuguese, acquisition is something that filters down naturally, so you're not really aware that you're learning a language. So, you know, you've decided to go to Portugal, do total immersion. Already you've made that decision, and you have to try and remember words. So you are very aware that you are learning a language, even if you think you're doing it naturally, and you may be doing it in a more natural way. You are thinking about input. It's not a secondary. If you acquire a language, and like I say, you can acquire a language pretty easily up into your 20s. But the new language with acquisition, it will be a byproduct of something else. So maybe you'll be spending time with friends or people that only speak a language, and it's the only way to communicate, and being friends with that person, or doing an activity like being in a choir, or I don't know, being with a group. So the language comes after that activity, or that group or whatever. It's a secondary product. That is true acquisition. So moving on, otherwise the video will get a bit long. So does input have to be comprehensible? Do you have to understand the input? You don't, but if you're going to learn, you know, effectively, if you're going to get fluency, again, it's one of those things that you are going to have to make that decision and say, well, I'm going to have to remember words, or I'm going to have to choose activities, you know, where I understand more of the language, or where I'm deliberately learning more of the language. So there are two sides to comprehensible input. If it is comprehensible, you will learn words, you know, structure, grammar, all the things you need to understand and to communicate in the language, and to actively use the language. If it's incomprehensible, now that actually does have its place, both with written language and obviously with spoken language, because with spoken language, if you know you're with people who are speaking, you don't understand it, but over time you are hearing the rhythms, the cadences, the general sort of palette, the sounds of how that language is used, so that all assimilates. And the same with, you know, seeing stuff in print. You are seeing, you know, the pattern, the flow, the cadence, because you can see, oh, here's a long word, here's a short word. So you're kind of seeing the rise and fall of everything. So it certainly does have a place, and it's kind of more what you would have on the acquisitional side, because of course, you know, when you're little and tiny, that's that is really your first impression of language. You're not going to understand, you know, it's going to be burble, 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 and occasionally you're going to get a word like cow, horse, teddy, mama, papa, what have you. But, you know, the burble of everything else, that would be taking shapes and forms. So, you know, oh, that person is happy, that person is laughing, that person's smiling as they speak. Oh, that person's speaking to me. They're asking a question. They're telling me I've got to do something. So you're learning all these sorts of soft skills, and they're all a bit different in languages. So whether the cadence goes up or down at the end of, you know, whether the tone rises at the end of a sentence or lowers at the end of the sentence. Does it rise at the end of a question or lower at the end of a question? That varies from community to community, sometimes within the same language. So you're learning all of these sorts of things. So to sum up, can you learn languages naturally as an adult? You can, but the possibility for that, not necessarily the ability, but the possibility for that, it kind of gets less and less and less as you get older. Because obviously the older you get, the more you're likely to be making a conscious decision to learn a language, or to remember words or whatever. And also, the older we get, the busier we get. So language is something we have to make time for. Whereas if you're 20, you go off backpacking, you meet people you like, you know, you stay in a community for a bit and you just enjoy, you know, being with in that country, maybe working in that country, and you just naturally pick up everything because you're 20, you've got no responsibilities, you know, you can live a free lifestyle. We can do less of that as we get older. So, you know, learning a language really has to be a decision, and we kind of have to plan it a bit more. So yeah, that is my take on that topic. So please like, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next video.